It's something that I hear so often from Border Patrol agents who just feel like their jobs are meaningless now. ICE, immigration and customs enforcement officers who feel the same way. I've spoken to adjudicators in the past who I still continue to talk to this day, who feel as though they have been accomplices in allowing criminals and terrorists into this country only because their government has forced them to. Inside the Border Patrol, if you want to take a peek deep inside what they are facing, then you do not want to miss this podcast. And you don't want to miss this podcast because guess what? Alejandro Mayorkas is coming up for impeachment. And I have a memorandum that I believe is the smoking gun as to why we have seen the insanity we are seeing at the US-Mexico border, why we are seeing the flooding of people from all over the world, a tsunami that is destroying our country and leading to humanitarian crisis that is unheard of. Unlike the open borders activists in DC and at the UN, the US Border Patrol actually sees the consequences of Biden's border policies firsthand, and then their hands are tied behind their backs. They see the abused women. They see the trafficked children. They understand that fentanyl is pouring across our borders and killing our own children. They see the violence and the crime in our own streets. Unfortunately, under Mayorkas and Biden, which could be Obama, which could be Susan Rice, because Biden doesn't make sense anymore. The Border Patrol can't focus on getting the bad guys and has to do paperwork and babysitting. Basically, the memorandum that I have right here that was written in 2021 by Alejandro Mayorkas is de facto the policy that is allowing this to happen. And the special guest, a recently retired Border Patrol supervisor, who can tell you what was happening inside and out, inside his agency, is going to explain to you why this memorandum allowing not only for prosecutorial discretion, which they never did, on migrants, it was pretty much the smoking gun, the de facto that allowed Biden and his foot soldier, Mayorkas, very good general, yes, sir, to allow all these people into our country. Agents are furious at the state of the situation, and I wasn't surprised at all when we found out that the Border Patrol fully supported Governor Abbott and would not cut down the concertina wire while I was in Eagle Pass in Shelby Park, and their decision to block off Shelby Park from the people that were crossing. That's why Border Patrol agents were like, look, we're with DPS on this. I mean, you really got to force us to do this. We don't want to do this. We want to do our job. On today's show, like I said, I have a retired Border Patrol supervisor. He is here to discuss how our agents really feel about the border and how they are hamstrung by Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and a massive policy that he put into effect in 2021 that involved not just prosecutorial discretion, folks, but went to the civil rights and civil liberties offices, the privacy office, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so as well as the Border Patrol. You are not going to want to miss this. If you want to hear what is in this memorandum in detail, one that he hand signed, you got to stay here at the Sara Carter Show, where we break stories and exclusives. But first, MyPillow. Thank you, Mike Lindell and the MyPillow employees. I want to thank my listeners for your continued support of an American company that does great American things like jobs, gives jobs to Americans, and builds these great products that we all enjoy and love. And right now, Mike Lindell has a huge, enormous blowout sale. Right now, you can get MyPillow's best prices ever and free shipping on your entire order. Visit mypillow.com/Carter and enter code Carter, CARTER at checkout for free shipping and huge discounts, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. Go to mypillow.com/Carter, CARTER, code Carter, CARTER, mypillow.com/Carter, code Carter, or call 1-800-685-7221. I have Joel Maldonado here. He is a retired Border Patrol supervisor, an amazing patriot, and somebody who has served in multiple stations across the Southwest border during his 28 years of service. After retiring, Joel, you wrote the book, The Binding Oath, A Border Patrol Journey and the Mayorkas Effect. And I think that title of your book was just so poignant to what we're going to be discussing today. I want to thank you so much for being on the Sarah Carter Show.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm a big fan, as you know, and I'm glad to be on. Thank you.
I want to start off with, before we get to this explosive document that I've obtained, it's a Homeland security document, a memorandum that was issued to acting director of U.S. Well, it was Tack Johnson. It was issued to him. He is the acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was from Alejandro Mayorkas. It was CC Detroit Miller over at U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Also, Jandon, the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Robert Silvers, the undersecretary in the Office of Strategy, Policy and Plans, Catherine Gonzalez, the officer of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, and Lynn Parker Dupree, the chief privacy officer with the Privacy Office. This was a very detailed 7-page memorandum that basically set off the Biden administration's policy on the U.S. border. You had a chance to review that policy. What do you think this is?
Well, first, let me state that I can understand why he's sending this memorandum to the ICE head and the CBP head, Troy Miller at the time, acting commissioner, and the USCIS. He includes all them. But when you see that he also includes the Undersecretary of Office of Strategy, Policy, and Plans, that should tell you something. What's going on? They're strategizing something. And then the next person, right, this Catherine Coulton Gonzalez, she is the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. What's that got to do with immigration policies? Well, anyway, and then the last one, I don't even know what that is. The Chief Privacy
Officer. I was going to ask you if you know the Privacy Office is.
My only guess is that they're trying to keep this private because no agents, or even when I retired in this past March, 2023, I had only heard murmurings of this. They kept us from doing our jobs, which we can get into in a minute. But most of the time, we just heard rumors of this, and nobody actually saw this. I don't think they meant for it to be distributed universally like this, or they just wanted the people at the top to understand, here's what we want to do.
I think what's so extraordinary about this too, Joel, is it's something that you said just before we came on. You talk about this, and then we're going to go into why it is, as being the quote unquote smoking gun, right?
Yes.
Explain.
This is it. The exercise of prosecutorial discretion. Well, we've always had that. That's what he claims on here. But throughout this whole memorandum that I read, he never once quotes law. Did you see? Am I wrong on that? But he never once quotes law. There's no law that he's saying. He's only putting policy over law. That's one thing that we first must take into account. Now, as far as Border Patrol agents, I can speak for them that when, let's say we got a smuggling load and the driver was an illegal alien, but he was, let's say he was suffering from severe diabetes and always needed to be on insulin, and he was going to be more trouble than he's worth. We always have that discretion of saying, let's just charge him and release him. That's what they mean by prosecutorial discretion. We've always had that discretion, but never was it meant to be a blanket thing of hey, we're shying away. We're no longer going to charge people unless they're known terrorists, according to this memorandum, unless they're terrorists or they're criminal element. And even then, he offers a bunch of platitudes as to or exemptions. So even if we encounter them, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they are
Right.
confirmed. So in other words, nobody is being charged here.
This is so crazy. So I want everybody to listen to this. And then Joel and I are going to go through this memorandum for you because we believe the American public should be made aware of how this administration has completely thwarted its duty to protect the citizens of the United States of America. That is what Joel did in his job as a Border Patrol agent, as a Border Patrol supervisor, dedicating 28 years of his life, writing a book to expose the truth. And now we find this memorandum. Now we're going to go through it with you. I already listed out all the people that Alejandro Mayorkas sent it to. Now I'm going to go to the subject line. This is guidelines for the enforcement of civil immigration law. That is what he's calling it. The memorandum provides guidance for the apprehension and removal of non-citizens, which means no removal when you read through this guideline. He goes on, Number one, this is the foundational principle, the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, meaning that everybody who's on the front lines, people who are picking people up, illegal aliens coming in, you're going to have the discretion of whether or not you are going to, right, prosecute them, whether or not you're going to hold them, whether or not you're going to release them. And that's going to leave it up to the person that's doing this. He goes to describe Justice Scalia and the Supreme Court, and he goes into this rambling. But in fact, an individual is a removable non-citizen, therefore should not be alone on the basis of the enforcement action against them. We will use our discretion and focus on enforcement resources in a more targeted way. Justice and our country's well-being require it. He says, by exercising our discretionary authority in a targeted way, we can focus our efforts on those who pose a threat to national security. And I'm calling BS on that because he doesn't even know who's posing the threat, right, Joel?
Well,
I mean, there are people coming in from all over the world.
He's creating the atmosphere for something catastrophic to happen because no agents are out there processing. And they're all so busy with all these people coming in and giving up because it's an open borders. That's the thing. And I want to go back to what you read there. It's on page 2. It says the fact an individual is a removable non-citizen, therefore should not alone be the basis of an enforcement action. So that just the fact that he's an illegal alien is not should not be considered alone a chargeable offense. That is saying for those people out there that are bread and butter, the 8 USC 1325, which is entry without inspection. If somebody enters, we can charge them with that to get them out of the country, or we can go the administrative route and go INA I-6A, which is still removing them, back to their home countries without charging them criminally. Either of those two have now been taken out of the process because that alone does not. So what Scalia meant by prosecutorial discretion meant the opposite. Because Scalia is not going to think that way, you know that. So Scalia is saying that, hey, if you catch a guy and he did nothing wrong, well, the agent always has the option of saying, you know what, I'm going to charge you criminally with 8 USC 1325 because you're illegally in the country. We have that discretion, especially like we have that discretion if, let's say, he was mouthy, he became verbally combative. You say, you know what? We're going to charge you with 8 USC 1325. That's what.
Or like they beat up 2 cops in New York City. We could say, hey, you know what? You're done. We're sending you out. Instead, we release them back onto the streets.
Well, Sarah, I'm glad you mentioned that. The fact that they did that, since they don't have a criminal record, for example, since they took out our bread and butter. And now you can't do anything to them. That's what that means. Unless those guys kicking them were terrorists or unless they were criminals, which we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you read carefully this memorandum, it says that we cannot rely on our databases alone. We need to do research and investigation, it says.
How do you do that? How does Border Patrol do that?
Well, you can't.
I mean,
because if they're criminals, and for example, all these Venezuelans that Maduro released, that's a proven fact. We knew that he released, just kind of like that incident when Fidel Castro did the same thing to us back in the 70s. We have no way of knowing, because we don't have a deal with all those countries. We don't always have Interpol with them. We just don't know what they've done in their home countries. So our database.
So basically,
go ahead.
So basically, which is what we've been saying from the beginning, which is what agents have been warning about, like you, for years now, is that Maduro could be dumping out his insane asylum, his prison, his just like Cuba could be doing it now, just like the Chinese government could be moving in spies, and we would have no idea because we have no working relationship with any of these countries, and we can't access any of their databases.
Mm-hmm. And before, the only thing that we had that we can for sure count on, Sarah, is the fact that we could always count on the fact that, hey, you entered illegally. So we can charge you with 8 USC 1325 or I-6A of the INA. We can charge you with that and get you out of this country. I always like to use the analogy, Sarah, that when people, even people that are seeking asylum, when you come to the door, which is the port of entry, you're knocking at the door. You as the homeowner have the right to say, well, you can't come in. But imagine now they're coming through your window at your home, Sarah. What do you do then? Well, when they come through your window, that represents our borders. That's what they're doing. That's why we can charge them with 8 USC 1325, because they are coming in through our windows. So let me make this, let's make sure this makes sense. If somebody comes through your window and says, hey, I'm afraid for my life, you're not going to take it very kindly, right? Especially if your kids are sleeping peacefully in their beds and somebody's trying to come in through your window. No, as a proud homeowner with Second Amendment belief, I'm not going to take that too kindly to that, somebody coming in through our window. Well, when you take 8 USC 1325 away, there's nothing you can do. Nothing. You just let them in.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah, that's why we're
so is this the smoking gun? This is saying, like, we've taken away all real authority. I mean, it's here in a memorandum. Look at this: civil immigration enforcement priorities. This is the new one, right?
Yes.
So this follows the discretionary authority. This is number 2 in the memorandum.
Right.
We establish civil immigration enforcement priorities. That means we're going to prioritize what we're going to do to most effectively achieve our goals with the resources we have, which he has completely failed at. We will prioritize for apprehension and removal of non-citizens who are a threat to our national security, public safety, and border security. Threat to national security.
That last part that you read, that we will prioritize for apprehension and removal non-citizens who are a threat to our national security, number 1, public safety, number 2, and border security, number 3. What do you call what we have going on right now? All those people at the border in masses are creating a public safety issue. They're creating a national security issue, because since agents aren't out there patrolling, Sarah, then what's going on? Those are the stupid ones, the ones that we're catching and the ones that are giving up. You think a hardened criminal, do you think a verified terrorist is going to give themselves up? So what is it if it's not a public safety issue, if it's not a national security issue, if it's not a border security issue? What is it? Then who are we going to deport? Because the people that are giving up, I guarantee you, don't have a terrorist charge under their belt. Or, you know.
Would you say that this is a policy that has allowed our nation to be threatened, like a policy developed by the Biden administration that is a direct threat to our nation?
This memorandum is exactly that. It is policy. Not once does he state, although he quotes Scalia once, but not once does he state a law that usurps this. When in the world, Sarah, have you ever heard of policy usurping written law? That's why I wrote my book, The Binding. That's why I titled it The Binding Oath, because agents, they raise their right hand to take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And guess what? All the immigration laws, whether you like them or not, they are derived from the U.S. Constitution, Article 1. So that it is incumbent. It is our duty to uphold these laws. And so when agents aren't doing that, then by definition, it's treason. And it's not their fault, but the fact that the higher ups are allowing this and facilitating and letting this clown talk and let policy usurp law is to me a dereliction of duty.
You brought up a very important point, and it's something that I hear so often from Border Patrol agents who just feel like their jobs are meaningless now. ICE, immigration and customs enforcement officers who feel the same way. I've spoken to adjudicators in the past who I still continue to talk to this day, who feel as though they have been accomplices in allowing criminals and terrorists into this country only because their government has forced them to.
Yes.
Tell me about how that affects, as we go through this document, because we'll continue to go through it, but how that affects the morale of the agents. We've seen an increase in suicide, how that affects the morale of the families, and what it's going to take to get us out of that.
Well, well stated, Sarah. That thank you for that question. When you violate your conscience, when you're not able to uphold the Constitution, the oath that you took to do this job, it takes a toll on you. And it's of course, law enforcement always has those rates a little bit higher than the average citizen, but more since this manufactured crisis, and that's what it is. Ever since this manufactured crisis began, agents have seen an astronomical rise in divorce and suicides. I think last year there was 39 suicides and 3 in the month of November alone. For me, towards the end of my career, at least I had a light at the end of the tunnel. But a lot of these agents, the ones that don't have that much time in, well, they go on to other careers or move on, and nobody's talking about that. That pretty soon these Bush hires back in the day, they're all eligible for retirement coming up really soon, and they're going to lose all because nobody's waiting to age 57 anymore. That used to be the way it always was. People stuck around because this job was so great. It's exciting. You're serving your country. You feel a purpose. And now, as soon as you're eligible, you're out the door. And I guarantee you, all those Bush hires, that when they're eligible, they're gone. And nobody's talking about, and no one wants to be. Many trainees are hired. Let's say we hire. Let's say 10 show up at a station. Well, shoot, we only keep like 3 because some go off to another station. Some would show up and say, I didn't sign up for this and leave. And so we can't, the attrition, I mean, it's a mess. But that's what they want. They know full well what they're looking at. But that's what they want because they want open borders. They want the few agents that are around to be processing and not and away from enforcement.
That is just, to me, the most honest. That is a great answer. I mean, what you're saying, it's heartbreaking because I've been covering this for more than 20 years. And as a Border Patrol supervisor, it has got to be just gut wrenching to know that your own government You're fighting an enemy across the border, but the enemy is right here at home against you. And they want to dismantle. We've seen that. Defund the police, dismantle ICE, dismantle BP. And we've seen the toll that that's taken in this document, Joel. It goes on to the threat of public safety. I'm going to read a little bit of that, and then I'm going to let you answer that. He talks about a non-citizen who poses a threat to public safety, typically because of serious criminal conduct, is a priority for apprehension and removal. We know that not to be the case. We've seen it in our face. But we also know, just like you said, we can't conduct appropriate background checks. There can be aggravating factors that militate in favor of an enforcement action. Such factors can include the gravity of offense of conviction and sentence imposed, the nature or degree of harm of a criminal offense, firearm or dangerous weapon, serious prior criminal history. Conversely, there can be mitigating factors that militate in favor of declining enforcement action, such as advanced or tender age, lengthy presence in the United States. This is crazy. A mental condition that may have contributed to the criminal conduct. I mean, like anybody can say, hey, I've got a mental condition that made me kick the cop's ass in New York City last night.
Or they say, I had a bad day. I woke up and
I had a bad day.
Bed. Yeah. And that's all.
States a victim.
As you were reading,
it goes on
Sarah,
and on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it just goes on and on. In the last, whether or not the citizen may be eligible for humanitarian protection or other immigration relief or other. So like you're a criminal, but you need humanitarian protection and other, basically this is a carte blanche. This is carte blanche to let everybody in. I've got it right here.
That's what I was going to say when you were reading those out, Sarah, is that those are basically just exemptions to deporting people. The few that are eligible for deportation, he's finding ways to keep them in the country. That's what that is, plain and simple.
I mean, I think this is impeachable.
Absolutely.
He's coming up for an impeachment hearing. This is impeachable.
But, you know as well as I do that ain't going to happen. And then if it does happen, what are they going to do? Biden's still in charge. He's going to put another lackey in there to do the same thing. I'll give credit where credit is due. Mayorkas is a great foot soldier for the left and for his goal of transforming America as we know it. He can take a grilling like nobody else. He can not answer a question like nobody's business. He's an amazing, an amazing lackey for this government of open borders.
Let me ask you this. Do you also believe that the behavior of our own government is contributing to the growth and strength of the cartels overseas and the human traffickers? Like they're benefiting from this policy, this now very written policy, by the way. I mean, something's going on here.
How can they not? They have to believe that they're dreaming, having a great dream, and that this is just handed to them. They operate these masses, right? I mean, they're the ones that coordinate this and say, hey, all of you cross at this time right through here. Meanwhile, fentanyl is crossing over here, and over there. And this is just too easy. And I can't even imagine the child, all the sex slave, all the women getting raped, all this stuff, it's an astronomical number of the women that get raped that take this trip up here. And
child abuse, like you were mentioning. It's hard to mention. By the way, I understand why it's hard for it to come out of your mouth, because I don't even know what to say when I say what happens to these children is so horrific that it's hard, because I don't want to say it either. Like, you don't want to say these children are being put into the sex trade. These children are literally being destroyed by pedophiles, by people that are monsters. And our government is making it easier for these monsters to do it.
Yes.
Not you, not Border Patrol. I've watched your agents. My gosh, I have seen agents, get down on the ground with like sick and dying, migrants. Didn't matter if they had COVID, didn't matter if whatever they had, they didn't even care. They didn't even ask a question. They get down there, they're trying to give treatment, they're putting their life on the line, like the National Guardsmen who jumped into the river to save those two. Ended up they were drug dealers or they were drug smugglers or mules, but he lost his life in the river. Doesn't matter. You guys have done it. I've seen you on the front lines working to save lives. But our government is making it possible for people to lose lives. And that's why I want to jump to this, because you and I were in a state of shock, by the way, when we saw the civil rights and civil liberties.
Yes.
Civil rights and civil liberties. Talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to read. Well, let me read it to you first.
Yes.
We must exercise our discretionary authority in a way that protects civil rights and civil liberties. The integrity of our work and our department depend on it. A non-citizen's race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity, national origin, or political associations shall never be factors in deciding to take enforcement action. First of all, I would certainly hope that their political associations would be a factor in taking an enforcement action. I don't want somebody coming here who's like working for Xi Jinping or who supports Hamas, who's like, you guys can't take that into a factor. I support Hamas and it's in your policy. I can believe in whatever I want to believe in. Also, a non-citizen's exercise of their First Amendment rights also should never be a factor in deciding to take enforcement action. I mean, it's another excuse to basically let everybody in.
No, well, that's exactly right, and please understand that. Let's look at the issue that's going on right now. Okay, we have these huge numbers of people and masses, and agents don't have enough areas to even detain, because everybody's coming in, Sarah, and claiming credible fear. So who can claim credible fear? If you read the letter of the law, it says people that have, it's a political asylum issue. So never in the history of our country have people been able to come in and say, well, I'm afraid of gangs. And then we let them in. Or I'm afraid because I'm gay. I'm afraid to go back to my country. Or I'm afraid of poverty. I tell everybody, well, hell, I'm afraid of poverty too. You will not believe, Sarah, the excuses and reasons they give. Agents are not allowed to challenge that. They're not allowed to challenge that. This is where this is coming from. What you just read is saying, well, let them in, let asylum officers or immigration judges deal with it. But what happens is you create a backlog. And that's why you're seeing in the news that some people don't have dates till 2031. That's what they want, Sarah. This is a manufactured crisis. I know I've said that before, but I'll say it again.
And this is manufactured by who?
By Biden, and and Biden can't put even a sentence together. But let's face it, this is George Soros. This is the powers that be behind the scenes. Susan Rice, probably whoever's running his government. But Mayorkas is the greatest of the foot soldiers. That whoever's running this government is serving.
Would you say this is an invasion? Would you say this is an invasion?
I can't categorize it any other way. What do you call recruiting people in their home countries and saying, "Come over here, we'll give you prepaid credit cards," and then you let's not even go there, okay? Because the children get laptops. People get they're staying in hotels for free for all this time. Let's not even go there. Let's just talk about the fact that this administration created an app to make it easier to come here and claim what they claim. What does that tell you? This is manufactured all the way, and they're creating this invasion at the border, and we're ripe for an invasion. It's making us weaker. When your borders, every nation sovereign nation, has a right to protect its borders. Did you know that Mexico has a very, very strong immigration law, and they just don't enforce it in their southern border because people are just passing through, coming over here. But if you put a little threat like Trump did, a little to the Mexican president, he will do his part. He would, but right now they're just come on in.
He doesn't have to, because I mean, we're basically taking people in, and not only that, we're going to pay him. We're going to cut deals with him. Right now, this year before the election, is what we're hearing is that they're cutting deals just to make it slow down the pace just enough to
Yes,
not make it seem as scandalous as December. But
exactly.
there's still historic numbers coming in. Right here under this civil liberties is guarding against the use of immigrant enforcement and tool retaliation for the assertion of legal rights. This is very interesting.
That's threatening agent.
It
That's what that is.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
Okay, explain. Let me read a piece and then you explain why this is threatening agents. This is so great. Our society benefits when individuals, citizens, and non-citizens alike assert their rights by participating in court proceedings or investigations by agencies enforcing our labor, housing, and other laws. It is an unfortunate reality that unscrupulous employers exploit their employees' immigration status and vulnerability to removal by, for example, suppressing wages, blah, 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 blah. We must ensure our immigration enforcement authority is not used as an instrument of these and other unscrupulous practices. A non-citizen's exercise of workplace, I thought they couldn't work because they're a non-citizen
Yes,
unless
that's right.
they've got a green card and they can work, of tenant rights or service as witness in a labor or housing dispute should be considered a mitigating factor in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion. Wow.
Yeah.
That just basically says, right?
Yes.
Just,
They're trying.
we're not going to deport him.
Well, all of a sudden the law is so important to them when it comes to that, So, but how about 1986 IRCA law that says that it's illegal to hire illegal aliens? And you know what? And these, did you ever hear that story about Covenant Trucking Company, a Christian company? Do you know what happened to them? They were asking people that wanted to come work for them, said, "Are you legally here?" And they got sued by the Biden administration, and they paid up. And for following the law, they were just picking on a Christian company. Well, catch this. The only reason Reagan signed that into law in 1986 was because he was promised that they would have employment sanctions. And now we don't even do that. 10 years later, 1996, Clinton comes up and says, "I have no power." Does that sound familiar here? What's going on? Because Biden lately is saying, "I have no power. I need you to pass this." So in 1996, they passed the IRCA law again, but this time they added an extra I. But what they said is you can have illegally present. What that means is that people that are in Ohio, for example, when you encounter them and they're illegally, they are considered illegally present. It would be like they're at the border. And then we can go on and on. 8 USC 1324, which is harboring and smuggling. The NGOs, the non-government organizations, the Catholic Church, or these other entities are doing that for us at taxpayers. The taxpayers are footing the bill for that. We're sanctioned smuggling organizations. Did you know that if you're a terrorist sympathizer, you can be deported if you're not legally here? Why aren't we deporting those people that are out there marching? Why aren't we deporting public charges? Did you know that if you become a public charge, you're deportable? That means that if you go to the hospital and the taxpayers have to pay for it, you're deportable. We're not deporting. So 8 USC, I mentioned 8 USC 13.
We're not following that law at all, though. We're not following the law at all.
No, in no immigration law, we're not following because of prosecutorial discretion.
Which is
the smoking
not
gun.
a law.
Yeah, it's a policy. It's a policy. Yes.
And is there this unspoken policy that if you follow the law inside your organizations, like Border Patrol, like ICE, if you're the kind of guy that's like law and order, ma'am, that's it, and you do it, that they're going to come down on you as a supervisor, they're going to come down on you as a leader, and you'll no longer be a part of that organization anymore. You'll be demoted or you'll be ostracized?
Well, I submit to you, Sarah, that they're not giving you that opportunity. This policy has become so overbearing that that example I gave you about how we're trying to be sneaky to get people out there to work, agents to work, so they can catch illegal aliens. Well, they come down on us and say, no, this is more important. Processing is more important. That takes priority. So they can't straight up say, hey, you're not going to prosecute him because they know we have that discretion. They like to talk about discretion one way, but not the other way, you know. That's what they're doing. They're not even giving us an opportunity. I think they got this edict. Wow. All the higher ups got this edict. It was unspoken, and it was just implemented, and it took precedence. And now these young agents don't even know the difference. They don't even know that these laws exist. These laws exist because we're a nation of laws.
Do you think, and well, let me ask you that. Do you think they're even training the agents on the laws anymore? Or are the agents just coming in, do their basic like physical training, their gun handling training, all of that, but it's like they're not really aware of all like the 1986 laws, of the laws that would allow people to be deported if they're in the hospital and on the taxpayer dime, or that the agents just aren't even aware of it anymore. They're just following their supervisor's orders.
Well, let me just say this, and I want to
not even challenging.
I want to be very clear that this organization, the U.S. Border Patrol, is a young agency. We were founded in 1924 in May. We're about to come up on our 100-year anniversary. These are great men and women that do their job, and they have a mission. And the Border Patrol mission has always been the same, Sarah. That's never changed. The mission is still the same. Our training is still the same. The law is still the same. Does that make sense? Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is these stupid policies that are keeping us from doing it. So yeah, we're still being trained the same. We're still expected to do our jobs, and the oath is still the same. And last time I checked, the Constitution is still the same.
That's awesome. You're right. You're absolutely right, Joel. You're absolutely right. And these policies are basically suffocating the law. They're suffocating the ability for agents to actually do what's right to protect the citizens of the United States. Are you worried that when, I'm just going to say it, when the shit hits the fan, when a terrorist comes, you know, and I believe sleeper cells are in here right now, a bomb goes off, an attack happens, God help us, that when those people in Washington, D.C. that push prosecutorial discretion all the way down everybody's throat, that the person that's going to pay the price for that is going to be some poor agent on the front line, or some poor ICE officer, or some adjudicator that was basically forced to let people in, forced to process people in. And in the end, they're going to be like, oh, well, they didn't do their job. We gave them prosecutorial discretion, even though we forced them to let everyone in.
Well, let's get to that disclaimer I was telling you about. If you want to look at page 5, at the very bottom, in fact, section 5, the quality and integrity of our civil immigration enforcement actions. It says, the civil immigration enforcement guidance does not compel an action does not compel an action to be taken or not taken. Instead, the guidance leaves the exercise of prosecutorial discretion to the judgment of our personnel. Is that not a disclaimer to you? That's what I read from it. I mean, you know, so it's saying that.
Bingo. Yeah. That's him taking away all responsibility from the federal government. Hey, I set up the policy, but guess what, boys and girls?
You knew better. Yeah. And, you know, that's so I wouldn't be surprised, Sarah, if that's the case, but I'm afraid it's going to be a bigger more implications that come from it. Unfortunately, you know as well as I do that they're going to say, well, let's do away with Americans' rights to privacy, or I think that's what they would do. They would be an excuse for them to now, since they didn't do their job.
You mean to expand like the Patriot Act,
Exactly.
to expand like their ability to spy on Americans. It's like a big excuse. It's like, okay, the shit's going to roll downhill. We'll blame the poor sap that we forced to allow people in. And then we'll say, in order to protect you, we've got to expand our national security apparatus and spy on every single one of you, even more so than we already are.
I'm no prophet, but you called it. that's
I got to tell you, Joel, I could talk to you. I'm going to bring you back. We got to keep talking. I have to bring you back maybe next week. I'm going to bring you back because we've got to talk about the Mayorkas impeachment. We've got to go into your book, and I want to read the title of the book again, and I'm going to say it at the top of the show as well, so that everybody, please go out and support this awesome patriot, retired Border Patrol supervisor, spent 28 years of service. If you want to understand what is happening on our border, and I'm telling you this, when I met Joel, I had no idea really that he was the author of this book or any of this. I just, after I saw the title of his book, I was like, where have you been my entire life of covering this? Because it's right on the money. It's called The Binding Oath, A Border Patrol Journey and the Mayorkas Effect. Where can people get the book, Joel? Is it Amazon?
Yes, you can go to Amazon. A lot of people love Amazon because of the Amazon Prime members out there. So it's on Amazon, also on barnesandnoble.com, or you can go straight to my publisher, the outskirtspress.com, and get it through there. But I think people will enjoy it. And it's not just about boring politics. Like me and you, Sarah, could talk about politics all day because we're political junkies, but it also has a lot of action in there, a lot of funny stories, a lot of sad stories, and but it's a lot of history. I like history. So I think people will enjoy it. It's for soccer moms out there, but to be educated on what's going on.
Right. Absolutely. And I do, you're a lot like me, Joel. I believe in taking people on that adventure with me and letting them, take a moment to step in your shoes and really see what life was like on the front lines of the U.S. Southern border. And thank you for all you do for our nation. Thank you for your service to our nation and your continued service. And I look forward to having you back on the Sarah Carter Show soon.
You got it. Take care, Sarah.
First of all, I want to thank you, Joel. I want to thank you for your bravery. Thank you for standing up for what's right, for being a true patriot, and for exposing the corruption within our own government. And guys, if we don't fix this, that's each and every single one of you who listen to the show. If we don't stand up to our lawmakers and say enough is enough, no more, God help us, because like Joel said, we don't know where this is all heading. God help us if there's an attack in this country. God help us at the reach of our government officials that have forgotten that they work for us. We do not work for them. And finally, let's pray for November, folks. Things will change if we put someone new in office. That is what our founding fathers and our Constitution is all about. Please make sure you subscribe to the Sarah Carter Show on your favorite podcast app. It helps us keep the show free and really gives us a boost in the algorithm. And that's very, very important. If you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, give us a like and a follow as well. I read all your reviews. Thank you so much. Follow me on Truth at Sarah Carter Official, on X at Sarah Carter DC, and on Instagram at @SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. God bless our great nation and its future. And God bless the great state of Texas.